men's events are single-sex, so why have single-sex events? Why not have women too?
Well, this is what we thought, or assumed, at the very beginning, when the FWB was started. We assumed that everything would be mixed, because in the West so many activities are mixed in the sense of men and women. I'm told, by the way, that in the States mixed means racially mixed, and for mixed in the sense of men and women they say co-educational. But anyway, I'm saying mixed, and I was saying it in the English rather than in the American sense. So yes, originally we had just mixed events. All our activities were mixed. Our retreats were mixed. Our centres, of course, were mixed, and even the embryonic communities that we had in those early days were mixed. I, of course, had come from India, where things usually aren't mixed, but I had thought, well, in the West everything is mixed, why not? So in this way we continued for several years. For at least 4 or 5 years, perhaps more, everything was mixed. But though things were going along pretty well, they weren't going along all that vigorously. And some of us were a bit concerned to intensify things. And it so happened, I think almost by accident, that one weekend there was a retreat and there were only men on it. I have a vague idea that someone thought that maybe it would be a good idea for men just to go away together for the weekend. It was just a very vague idea, just a sort of experimental thing. But anyway, they did this, and everybody who went on this men's retreats was quite astonished, or at least impressed, by the difference it made. And this gave us considerable food for thought. We thought about it quite seriously, and we did come to the conclusion that a single-sex situation was one which was much more helpful to people in the living of the spiritual life and the getting on with their spiritual practice and meditation and so on. Well, I looked at it like this. This is one of the things I used to say after making this discovery. After all, why do we go away on retreat at all, whether single-sex or mixed or any other kind of retreat? We do it to be able to get on with our spiritual practice, our meditation, our human communication, our study, more intensively than we would normally be able to do. And we're usually not able to get on with those things intensively because of distractions. There are all sorts of distractions in the city, for instance. So we go away into the country to get away from the distractions of the city. We go away from our homes to get away from the distractions of family and TV and all the rest of it. But it seems paradoxical. Well, it did seem paradoxical when we came to think of it, that men, to look at things for the moment just from their point of view, went away on retreat, leaving aside all distractions, except what, for most men, is the biggest distraction of all, namely woman. So in a way it seemed absurd, to go away on retreat, but take along this biggest distraction with you. In the same way, it would be equally absurd, and was equally absurd, for women to go away on retreat and take with them the biggest distraction of all, namely men. So in this way we came to the conclusion that the single-sex community, whether for men or for women, constituted a much more favourable environment for intensive spiritual development. Because I even noticed, when we had those mixed retreats and so on, there was a constant interplay, one might even say a constant semi-flirtation going on between many of the men and the women present. And obviously we had mostly young people on our retreats, so this was all the more likely to happen. And this sort of continual semi-flirtation, and sometimes even quite open flirtation and more, set up a sort of undercurrent that had a very, very detrimental effect on the retreat as a whole, as soon as one wanted really to get into it more seriously. So for this reason mainly, for this sort of reason mainly, we started thinking quite seriously that the single-sex type of retreat, the single-sex living situation, the single-sex community is much more helpful to those wanting to lead a spiritual life. So from that time, and that's about 10 years ago, single-sex situations of every kind have become the norm for the FWBO. We don't exclude the possibility of other situations. We are quite open to the possibility of situations of another kind being helpful to some extent for some people. But broadly speaking, we do find that the single-sex situations, including events like the men's events, are the situations in which progress really does take place.